It's been a tough challenge through the provinces and the qualifiers for today's quarter-finalists, and this afternoon they face another stiff test on the road to All-Ireland redemption.
Cork lose in Munster.
There is no way back for Tipperary. It's looking like the quarter-final route for them.
Antrim defeated again. Antrim are in the quarter-final. He's going for it! He's got it! SHC! Clark Corbett hits it! Brilliant! And there's trouble for Wexford. Green flag.
Here's an opportunity. The substitute. What an impact by Kevin Hines!
So who will join Kilkenny and Waterford in this year's All-Ireland hurling semi-finals? First into action in today's quarter-finals are Cork and Antrim, and their match throws in at 2 o'clock. Then our second match of the day is Galway against Tipperary, and that game is scheduled to start at 4 o'clock. Hello and welcome to Croke Park for this afternoon's live hurling action. Well, we had drama aplenty in Thurles in the gathering gloom of last Saturday evening. Well, what lies ahead in today's quarter-finals? Well, to discuss all of that, I'm joined here in studio by our regular hurling panellists, Cyril Farrell, Tomás McCahey and Ger Loughnane. Sir, let's just first of all reflect on the minor quarter-final that we saw here between Galway and Waterford. 115 to 2-8 in Galway's favour at the end, a 4-point win. They seem to be more in control of the game than the scoreboard suggests, but it got tight towards the end of the second half.
It got tight halfway through the second half. They lost away a small bit, but again, a nice, very skillful team from Galway. Started off the weekend well, like they have the races next week, and hopefully another senior win here later on. Forwards look very good when they're, before they changed them. They had to make a few changes at the backs. I would expect the next day that for Kilkenny game, that's what they play in the semi-final. There'll be a few changes on the team, but again, it's the same Matty Murphy Moe. They're very skillful, very good, and they will improve again. And like they won, as you said, you'd think they won by a lot more. They only won by 4 points, but they'll be quite happy just to get over the first game. It's always a banana skin. They'll be happy to have won and they'll drive on from there.
And a bit of a misfortune for Waterford as well. One of their players suffered a bad injury, broke his leg.
Broke his leg. No, it was an accident really, but just shows what can happen. Like, and we wish him well. Like, he was carried off and it looked serious at the time. Hopefully it's not as serious as it looked.
Yeah. All right, lads. Thanks. Tomás, let's talk Cork and Antrim and the first of today's quarter-finals.
Yeah, I suppose, Michael, it's 6 years now since Antrim and Cork met in a quarter-final stage. 6 years since Antrim here a quarter-final as well. And I mean, that game was virtually over at half-time. I think Cork were leading at 2-13 to 3 points, right? You would hope from a neutral perspective that you would get much better fare than we did that day, and that Antrim will be a lot closer to Cork. It is a big game for Cork, certainly, to get back on track after last weekend. Dennis Walsh would have said all week, look, we've had 2 fierce hard games. There were a lot of physical contact in that game as well. So I believe they trained very, very hard on Wednesday night. They trained last night in Portlaoise on the way up, so they're expecting to get a very, very tough from Antrim, but you would expect it. I mean, the Cork will have too much here, so and again, I suppose it's probably a good game in the basis that, right, if they get over this one, it gets them in the right frame of mind for a bigger tussle down the road. But you would expect Cork to win this, and maybe if they have ambitions of doing something decent in the semi-final, they've got to win this one fairly handy.
Let's, Ger, briefly look at the second quarter-final then, which will be seen later on in the afternoon. Galway and Tipperary, a lot of people looking forward to this.
Well, I suppose this will be the game of the day, although you just never know how things work out.
We need a good game, because there haven't been too many so far.
There haven't been too many really classic games, but if ever there was going to be one, this has the makings of one, at least whether it will turn out or not. You know the story of Tipperary, the shock against Cork. Worse than that, their shocking display, I suppose, against Cork. But I think that was just a once-off. Since then, they have rebuilt their team. They have rebuilt their confidence through the games against Wexford and against Offaly. The 2 big areas of difficulty for them, midfield and half-forward line, have completely changed. Now, they haven't been proven yet, of course. Today is a big test of them. Galway, on the other hand, really, the 7 points didn't reflect the difference between themselves and Kilkenny. What damage that has done to Galway, we just won't know until the game starts. There are so many imponderables about both teams that today is the day that'll settle it. But whoever wins today will bounce into Croke Park in 3 weeks' time. Their confidence restored, all the questions have been asked, and they'll be really they'll fancy their chances of getting to the All-Ireland final. So that is why this is a really massive game today.
Cork out on the field here for the first of today's quarter-finals. Ger, how do you see that one?
Well, you look at Antrim. 2 years ago, Galway went up to Antrim. I was with Galway, went up to Antrim, and they were so indisciplined, so organised, beaten by 25 points. Waterford went up 2 weeks later, beaten by 21.
Yeah.
All of us came back. Journalists and all, we were all coming back to the bus after. We said, is this the end of Antrim hurling? Will it ever be any good again? Then they were beaten last year by Dublin by 10 points, by Laois, by Offaly. And now Denny Cahill, Jerry Wallace comes along and a whole change takes place. Very unlucky to be beaten by Offaly.
Yeah.
You know, we brought him the extra time. Then the big shock of the year, beat Dublin the last day. So we don't know really what to expect from Antrim, but we know that they'll be well organised, that they'll play a very, very open game. They have all the same names as were there 2 or 3 or maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Some of them are there since 2004 that Tomas
And
was talking
sons
about.
of players from before
And
that even.
sons of players, you know, so they have a combination of the old and then the new. Paul Shields, Shane McNaughton is in the field, PJ O'Connell corner forward. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're like. But really, for Cork, as Tomas has summarised it, Cork have to produce a big display here today. They have to get goals. But most of all, they have to put away Antrim early. You know, if you don't put away Antrim early, you're going to be in trouble. But you couldn't expect anything else except an Antrim victory.
All right, OK. Well, let's get some further views on today's opening quarter-final here at Croke Park. We're going to head down to pitchside right now, where Joanne Cantwell is standing by, and she is joined by Terence McNaughton of Antrim and Cork's Diarmuid O'Sullivan.
Well, we've been reminded all week about Denny Cahill's famous words back in 2004 between the meeting of these sides, and how he suggested that maybe Cork's players were past their best at that time. Diarmuid O'Sullivan was playing that day. Did it really make a big difference?
Well, I suppose, Joanne, we were coming out of Killarney after a good win against Tipperary, so Denny was yet again putting more pressure on us, and I think at the time, you know, this team was able to cope with the pressure, and I don't think Denny did themselves any favour.
You went on to win the All-Ireland that year. How close or how far away is this current team to that standard?
Well, it's hard to say, it's hard to judge. You know, they were obviously disappointed after being beaten by Waterford, but look, today is another step. They're very lucky to have a championship game so close. If they can get a victory, they can build for the next 2 weeks going forward.
Well, Samba McNaughton, Denny hasn't been giving quite so many optimistic predictions this week. What are the realistic expectations for Antrim today?
I think if Antrim can come out of here today and prove for it, we're a very, very young side. I think it's an average age of 22, and the intensity of the game last week that Cork and Waterford played, the Antrim game wasn't of the same intensity. If we can live with Cork, and you never know, we're looking big games from our spine up the middle. Neil McManus and Liam Watson, two fine hurlers, and they haven't, like against Dublin, they struggled. You know, so we're looking for big games, and they're ball winners. And if them two can get going, you never know, John.
There is a family connection as well, because your son Shane is playing in midfield. Obviously, Diarmuid's brother Paddy is playing. Is it difficult to be watching from the sidelines like that?